people would come to me and say, can you go and talk about this? Because here's what's going on and we don't think it's right. And we know that you have no fear. And I would. I absolutely would. I would tell any executive, I don't care if you're CEO of the company, yeah, that's wrong.
From Sixth Story, I'm your producer, Dinah Hong, and you're listening to Rev Up Your Potential with Hilda Gann, the show where we talk with the entrepreneur next door about the stories behind their success and the lessons they've learned along the way. Today's guest is a senior executive partner at Gartner Canada, an IT research and advisory company. Prior to joining Gartner Canada, she was vice president of Hewlett-Packard Software Technical Sales, leading a team of over 300 technical software sales professionals across North and South America, contributing to $500 million in sales. In today's episode, she and Hilda will talk about what it was like being a woman of color working in IT, how she was raised to be confident, what she does when she gets the heebie-jeebies, and so much more. So please enjoy our conversation with Debra Christmas.
From the time I was very young, I wanted to be a criminal attorney. I was born in the 50s, so I was a big fan of all the law shows, and I watched them all the time. I could picture myself, in the courtroom, dressed to the nines, of course, doing my oration and closing. That was my aspiration, believe it or not. Now, I took the LSAT test at 21 years old when I graduated from university and did not do so well. I have no idea what the score was. I should really go and see if I could find that. I'm not good with tests. I'm good with essays. I'll write a book. If you give me 5 essay questions and just let me go. And a colleague, really a neighbor of mine, actually said to me, have a backup plan. He was a lawyer. So we're talking 1978. And in 1978, there was a lot of lawyers that were driving taxis. I kid you not. They were not practicing law. They couldn't find employment. And he said, have a backup plan because this is a hard path. And I always thought I would just, apply to law school the following year. That was really the plan. And I actually fell into technology. I've never had a computer course, don't have a STEM background, never taken any kind of technology training in my life. But what I did is I ended up working for Philips, Micom, back in the early days, in the 80s. And what I've discovered is I was really, really good at helping people understand what technology could do from a benefits point of view. Because my whole thing was, when I was introduced to technology was, so what and who cares? Like, why does this matter? And that's all I really cared about. So I very quickly fell into this ability to train and educate people on word processors. They were just coming into play in the early 80s, on computing technology, because I asked those kinds of questions. Why is this of value to the person who's looking at buying it? And when I landed at Hewlett-Packard, which became, the mainstay of my career, that was in the early 80s, they literally wanted to, I kid you not, I think they put me through 10 interviews. And this was not unusual for HP because they were famous for their corporate culture, and they needed to ensure that you would fit, that you were a fit for the culture. So everybody and their mother had to talk to you. And I'm on my last sort of interview, and they wanted to take me down the hallway to show me HP 3000 mini computer. And this is the days, glass doors, door codes. And we get down the hallway, and I said, stop. And they were like, what are you talking about? I said, don't even open the door. And they're like, what? Because it's an engineering company, so proud of technology. I said, I will never enter that room, ever. And quite frankly, you don't want me to enter it. You really don't. Just tell me what it does and why that matters to somebody, and we'll be good. It was a moment where, you have a panel of people looking at you like you had 3 heads on your head. But I said, if you want me to help sell that to a customer, that I can do. If you want me to install or implement something, no. And it was the time in IT when IBM was starting to shift their model to being very customer-centric, meaning customer account reps, account executives, sell to executives, not sell to the technology people, where we were still selling to the technology and the engineering people. So the industry was shifting. Consultancies like System House and things like that, I was in Ottawa at the time, were coming up. And you could see the shift. I'm telling you, at the time, HP's selling model was the technology was so good, and it was. They were brilliant engineers and technologists. Their selling model was, here's what it does. How many do you want? That was basically it. There wasn't this kind of benefits realization, all that kind of stuff. So I ended up accidentally in technology. We were looking for a customer rep, and it became an incredible career. And I mean, this is 41 years that I've been in this industry, and I entered in 1978. It has really been an amazing ride.
And I think that it's very pioneerish, thinking of that time where technology was key, but they didn't know how to communicate it to the user. So you were a breath of fresh air, but they chose to hire that breath of fresh air rather than say, oh, well, she won't fit the mold. I think it's important for people to understand in those early days, there needed to be that bridge. You were that person that understand the real user world and teach me what I need to know to help other people understand why I need this. It's amazing how you turn that into a career. So people understand, you're saying to me, you are an executive in an IT world, but you are not an IT experienced, knowledgeable person in the IT world. But boy, can you help people understand why they need to buy this and what it will do. They don't know the details, but they need to know the outcome. And sometimes as entrepreneurs, we need to step back and say, I love what I sell, but what about the user? What do they need from you? And how do you turn it into language that way?
Yes, but that's exactly it. I'll give you an example. I was working for Philips in 1980, and the word processor had just come up. I'm in Ottawa. They're selling to the federal government. This is just a perfect example. And they're trying to replace IBM Selectric typewriters. We all know an IBM Selectric typewriter, that little ball. They were trying to go in and replace those with word processors. Keyboard, screen, and I'm like, why would they give up that IBM? I said, you better show me a little bit more as to what this thing can do, because why would they give that up? Like, we all can put a paper in a typewriter and away we go. And this electric was amazing. It's not like the Royals and the Underwoods I remember in school, where you practically break your fingers to, type on those. Then you could just slide across that keyboard. Like, it was just an incredible device. And I said, keep talking, as the sales, are telling me about it. And then they got to form letters and mail merge. And I'm like, that's it right there. You know how many form letters they have to do in the federal government and how long it would take to do those on an IBM Selectric? No, because they're doing them with labels. So now everybody knows it's a form letter because there's a label that's, been typed up and everywhere. I said, that's the ticket right there. So when I go in to educate and sell it, I'm selling it on that. And every secretary, because they were secretaries at that time, would be like, yeah, show me that. Show me that.
I remember in the 80s, I was a nursing director, and we dealt a lot with policies and procedures. And we'd vet them, and all you had to do was change 2 words, add 2 words to a page, and the secretary had to start all over again. And if that page now melded into the other page, you couldn't just make them stand alone. You had to write the whole thing over again. So yes, this was the ticket. The seller was going to be so much more relieved, and the time saved and the productivity. So kudos to you for always digging in to say, so why would I buy this? Or what use does this have for me? I wanted you to talk a little bit about your career, because you would have been in a career that was male dominated at that time.
So it is.
Yeah, and it is. So share a little bit about that. Were there hiccups along the way that you felt were stumbling blocks? I know you had shared with me that you wanted to make 100K by the age of 30. So take us through that, the time where women were not much in the IT career and your goal.
Yeah, it was really interesting, because I was always used to being the only one, because I was the only female of color. So yeah. I was more attuned to walking in a room and like, yep, there's just you. On that. But I could check now 2 boxes, female and of color. So
Yeah.
I was quite used to it. Now, what was interesting is because I was so fortunate to work for HP from a very early part of my career, this is something that they recognize way earlier than most other companies. And there were many female engineers, there were many female managers. They had actually put a lot of effort into STEM programs because they recognized that the field was not diverse enough. And HP was also very advanced in its diversity efforts. I think they've got more employee resource groups than any other company I've ever known, like over 100 and something. So they were ahead of their time in lots of areas. So I think, yes, you could look around and I could see I am outnumbered like 9-1, but I didn't feel out of place because the culture of the company was such an inclusive culture where employees and how employees engage and how employees were empowered. And I mean, that's an overused word now.
Yeah,
it wasn't then, where they were pioneers in working from home. I was able to work from home in the 80s. The company trusted you to get your job done. There was just a lot of interesting things. And so I could see it and I could feel it, but it wasn't an impediment where I didn't think my voice was heard. And so I was very fortunate in that regard. And I know that's not been the experience of a lot of women in this field.
Yeah, I know with the Black Lives Matter, you're hearing women who say they feel they're invisible, even
Yes.
at the table. And I think it speaks to two things. One is that you found a culture that really was ahead of its time, but who was what culture should be today: diverse, inclusive, a sense of equality and belonging. And the second thing is you knew that you were a minority. You know, you say 9 people in the room, and I'm the female, and I'm the Black females. But because of the culture, it was embracive, right? And you had the confidence to stand on your own and not say, I don't feel I'm an equal at this table. So I think it's a combination. The culture supported it. You, as a dynamic woman, supported their respect. And you commanded that because you were confident. And I want to share that with other people because I think sometimes people say, oh, I want to get a seat at the table. I want to get a seat at the table. I'm sorry I'm saying it in a whiny voice, but sometimes it sounds like that. And myself, like you, I'm a woman, I'm Asian, and I'm very short. So this is maybe 3 strikes that could be an impediment, but I never felt that way. I presented myself as an equal, that I earned my right at the table, and I think that's half the battle. So I say to people who want to get a voice, who want to get a say, gain confidence in who you are. Treat yourself as an equal at that table, at that discussion, and you will get the respect and build it, right?
That's one of the biggest issues, as you know, Hildred, for women in business, period, is their level of confidence. Because I've been asked many times, you know, how am I so confident? And I said, well, I was raised without gender boundaries. So I used to say to people, I was raised like I was a boy. Okay, there was no gender boundaries in our household. The girls did everything. We shoveled the snow, we did the grass. There wasn't that we only did the cooking or we didn't do the cleaning. There was none of that. And when I think about that, I realize how unusual that is in the sense. But, my father was a pretty traditional person, but he raised us with no boundaries. I'm telling you, we heard in our head all the time, don't let anybody tell you you can't do anything. Don't let anybody put any limits on you. You know what's right from wrong. Stand up for I can rhyme off like the 10 rules.
He said those things then.
Absolutely.
Cool.
It trained in your head that this is the way that you go out into the world. So when you have that from a very young age, my parents said I was standing in the backyard at 4 years old with a clipboard bossing around the neighborhood, and kids. But when you're raised that way, then it's not hard to have confidence. If you weren't raised that way, that's when this gets really interesting.
That's a powerful thing that you've just shared. It's we as parents can give our children an uplift in life by having affirming messages of of how they should live their life. And we as parents can put down our children, to make them feel they're not good enough. And that's something that they carry the rest of their lives or try to overcome.
Well, let me tell you, I'll give you a story with my daughter. So my youngest child is 31, she'll be 32, Jessica. And at 10, so she's raised with brothers, and she only had boys as friends when she was, you'd be young, but when we lived in Kingston. When we moved to Ottawa, all of a sudden she was hanging out with girls. So she's like 8, 9 years old. And she'd never had a lot of, she had female cousins, but all of a sudden I noticed at that young age, believe it or not, that little clicky thing kind of going on, with girls. And she was a real outdoor kid, athlete, likes to be outside, and she wanted to go tobogganing with her brothers and her brother's friends. And the sister of one of the friends said, no, I want you to come over. And she goes, well, no, I want to go out and I want to go tobogganing. And Jessica hangs up the phone and she was crying. And I said, why are you crying? She goes, I want to go tobogganing, but the other child's name was Jessica as well. She said she won't be my friend anymore if I don't come over. I kid you not. That is what this child said. And my son Matthew is looking at, what are you talking about? Because boys don't do that kind of thing. I said to Jessica, pick up the phone and repeat after me. Jessica, I am going tobogganing with Matthew and David and James, and we'd like you to come and go tobogganing. But if you don't want to go tobogganing, I'm sorry if you don't want to be my friend anymore. We're going tobogganing. And hung up the phone. I said, Jessica, I guarantee you that child will be on the end of the driveway in her snowsuit going tobogganing with you, which she was. But what it showed me was how quickly your child could be pulled down a path of influence and peer pressure. And I tell you, Hilda, I was on a mission from that point on because I hadn't seen that in my boys. So I all of a sudden was paying attention to how girls interact with each other and how, you can see that mean girl thing start to create and you're out of the clique because all we all want to do is belong. She was pushed out and I'm like, oh, hell no, that's not happening. And I truly became very, very, very focused on the messages that they hear, the words that come out of my mouth. I have a mantra, my children know it. Be careful with the power of your words because you do not get to take the words back. And to what you just talked about from a parenting point of view, you can apologize up the yin yang. The words cannot be forgotten. Yeah. When someone has heard them, the pain or the pleasure or the happiness or whatever can be reassociated. So I started to be very conscious as a parent of the lessons that I was teaching. And I would encourage all parents as well. Be very careful about the words that come out of your mouth. Because what you just said, you can either boost spirit and help them spread those wings and fly, or you can tear them down in a heartbeat.
In a heartbeat, for sure. And I think careful how you say the words. It's almost what I would add to it. It's not the words themselves. It's the tone. It's how you make people feel. They may never remember the words, but they remember the feeling of elation or of rejection or of feeling they've disappointed you. So think about not just what you say, but how you say it, because it's the feeling that's going to not go away. It's not the actual words, it's the feeling, how you make people feel. And that's whether you're a child or an adult, because when you have disputes or arguments, it's how you were made to feel. I want to talk to you a little bit about your belief in what you call do it afraid. What does that mean?
Well, it came out of my sister. One of my sisters. The actual phrase comes from someone she really admires, Joyce Myers, who is like a pastor, and you don't see a lot of female preachers out there. Sort of like a female Joel Osteen, I guess, that kind of person. And we let fear get in the way all the time, and particularly as females. And there's lots of studies and statistics on this, right? We feel we have to meet all the criteria in order to apply for a job. We feel we have to have all of these skills in order to position ourselves to be promoted. And I mean like all of them. We think we need to have 100% or 9 out of 10 versus, I've got 4 out of 10, which our male counterparts would go for the job in a second. Okay, like I've got this. So one of the things that I discovered as I was aspiring to, bigger and better positions and moving up the corporate ladder is I am not going to have all the skills. There's going to be something that gets me there, but I'll use an example. I cannot stand spreadsheets. They give me the heebie-jeebies. And I know as an executive, you got to be able to work a spreadsheet and you've got to be able to, do the financial management side. I can't stand it. I can't stand it. And when I was becoming sort of a chief of staff, operations manager for one of my leaders, this was a big leap. Think about the word operations person. Okay, that's a lot of spreadsheets right there. And I thought, I actually said to him in the interview, can we just ditch the operations person part? I could just be the chief of staff part. I can handle all the people. He said, no, it's a major part of the job. And I'm like, oh my God, I was petrified because the person that was sitting in the job was an Excel expert. Like she could do things with Excel that I didn't even know were possible. It's like a programming language. And I thought, oh my God, I'm going to fail at this job. And I just remember thinking, you just got to do it afraid. You just have to do it afraid. And you will get by the fear because you will learn. You're going to surround yourself by people who are competent. You're going to do whatever self-study education you need to do. And you are going to be really clear about where your strengths are and where there are areas not so strong over here. So I need to surround myself by people who can do that part. But you got to get past the fear, and often you can't. So you just have to do it afraid. Like just jump into the deep end and go for it. Okay. What's the worst that can happen?
Do you find as you get older, you're less afraid?
Absolutely. Yes. Almost fearless. Because what are you going to do to me? Fire me? I'm 63 years old. Go right ahead. Okay. Like it's just like you get to the point where you're just comfortable in your skin. And you also know, as the older you get, the more self-aware, hopefully you are, the more self-aware you are, the more that you understand what your real God-given talents are. And you tend to gravitate to let me go there because I'm really good at that.
Yeah.
I don't want to be challenged, but I'm really good at that.
Yeah, and I think those are really strong words. Find your strengths and really build on those. If we all go back to our toddlerhood, when we took our first steps, and when you walked like you were going to fall. And you would master those 3 steps, every 10 seconds. And then as soon as you mastered that, that's a piece of cake. I'm going to walk faster. So for the first 3 months of walking, it looks like the child's going to fall. Remember those days that you were running a little faster, but you mastered that. And then you start to run a little faster.
Exactly. That's it. And we say things. It's interesting when we talk about this because we are in a society and a culture of such accomplishment. Like we are accomplishment driven. I was raised to be accomplishment driven. We had so many goals and aspirations. That was just part of my upbringing. But when you think about in the business world, and we use terms like, try something new, innovate, fail fast, fail forward, nobody wants to fail. Nobody wants to fail because you can't get promoted if you fail. Like we actually say these things and people get it and say, yeah, that'll cost me my job if I fail. We really do need to either stop saying it or actually really mean it. And I think startups and incubators, they get that. They because that's part of their iterative process is try, fail till we get, the right thing. But the basic general corporate entity, I think that's just lip service. It's about results and, benefits and revenue and it's not about failure, but we kind of like to talk that way. But when we were younger, if you just use the child analogy, we tried things all the time and we failed. We fell down, we got ourselves up, we fell off the bike, we got ourselves up, we got out, we fell off the skateboard, we just kept trying. It wasn't a bad thing for us to fail because it was the trying that was the most significant part of the accomplishment.
And that's where the learning comes from. It's the trying. And perhaps, one of the benefits in COVID times is that most people who have tried to be perfectionists and wait to get everything right, they realized that during COVID times, we didn't have the luxury of time to do things, and that just start it and just do it and tweak it later. And we're given permission to do that. And we, as the receivers of that, are giving permission to be flexible and allow for mistakes to happen. So if some good has come from COVID, this is one of those, is to be flexible, to be tolerant and forgiving.
Yeah, it's nothing like things, change having to be a necessity, because that's what happened with COVID, it was a necessity. People had to work from home. A lot of companies, they didn't even have a work from home policy. They still don't. But all of a sudden, it was okay to work from home because we had to.
And then there were companies who declared, we have evaluated working from home and we have decided that we will not be doing this. And this is like in February, right? And then they had to kind of eat crow and say, well, everybody go home and work from home. And what happened to that policy that you reviewed and put it out there for the world?
Yeah, stupid.
It happens. I want to talk a little bit about your philosophy of mentorship and sponsorship. I think a lot of us know about having mentors, but getting sponsors is another thing. So share those two thoughts with us.
Well, mentors are essential. I mean, they are, and I'm talking mentorship where you are a mentor and where people are mentoring you. And people that are mentoring you should also be, we're hearing this term reverse mentors. I've got a few, that are 15, 16 years old. I learned tons from them. And I've actually officially said, would you be my mentor? Oh, they're honored. It's really sweet. Because they know things that I don't know. And they operate and exist in the world in a way that I don't exist. So when we think about mentorship, we usually think of it as very skills based in the sense of, I want to be better at X. And it could be leadership, or it could be learning how to do spreadsheets. Whatever it is, you're looking, you've seen somebody who's really good at, and it usually means we watch somebody and we admire how they're, we sort of, I want to be like you. Because, the way that you operate in the world and the way you engage. But it's usually about, I want to learn something. I want to be better at political savviness in a corporation, as an example, or I want to position myself for something. So it usually, you've got a mentee and you've got a mentor. And my suggestion for people is the mentee owns this relationship. They own it. They've gone and asked someone to mentor them on ABC. And they should come prepared. They should have regular cadence of meetings and chats and what do you want to talk through, et cetera, and run it. And I think many people, have mentors in their life, and many people have been mentors. I'm just was asked to mentor a young woman in Brazil last week, and I will take that on. And I'm very careful about, can I help you? What can I bring to the table? Who is the person? And what, what's the mutual benefit that we'll have? Sponsorship is a whole different ballgame. Sponsorship is, you aspire to be an executive, let's say at a company, and you need another executive to sponsor you through that process. That is having someone who sees what you can do, how you can do it, who believes in you, and will navigate that process. They basically become an advocate for you. They're talking about you and your skills and the value that you bring to the organization, and they will support, that moving up that corporate ladder and open up the doors for you to get there. They'll bring you to meetings. They'll engage with other executives. They are critically important because you're basically using their brand and how they are respected and thought of in the organization. That's going to help you move forward because they believe in you. And the challenge with sponsorship is very few people seek out a sponsor, where they literally will go to an executive and say, this is what I am looking to do. You and I have had some interesting conversations. Will you sponsor me through this? And because it's a pretty tight-knit club, that, the higher up the rung you get, both doors get, pretty tight. But we hesitate to do that. And I think and particularly women hesitate to do that. And I think we're afraid that someone's going to say no. That they're going to say, no, I don't believe in you, or no, I can't do it. And then we don't know what to do. Well, they say, no, you go and find another one. Like, it doesn't mean that you stop, you go and find another one. But very few, I think, women go down this path and recognize how valuable sponsorship is.
Is it recognized in corporate world amongst most companies or just certain ones? Because I think if you didn't have a sponsorship program, it might be seen as favoritism. Oh, well, so-and-so's trying to promote so-and-so and she's the favorite or he's the favorite, right? So unless it's deemed as a program and it's sanctioned, it would look like favoritism.
I think it depends on the culture of the organization and how people interact and how things get done. You know, part of getting a sponsor is declaring what you aspire to do. I'll give you an example. When I had a phenomenal leader come into HP, came out, Bruce Jones, but phenomenal individual. We still are connected today. We still talk. Bruce came in as the new leader, and he's doing his meet and greets and one-on-ones as he's meeting the directors that report to him. I was one of those people, and set up an individual one-on-one, get a sense of who you are, you know, your family, and blah, 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 blah. And, you know, he said, you know, what do you aspire to do? What's your career aspirations? I said, I want your job. I said, when you're ready to move on. Operative word being when.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
When you're ready to move on. He was like, now that's a bold statement. He'd been at the office like in 2 weeks. And he never forgot it. And he said, okay, I'm glad to hear that. Now I have his attention. I have declared, I want your job. Now, it doesn't end there because there's nothing automatic here. Now, what has to happen is as you go through the cycle of performance reviews, et cetera, like you were just talking about earlier, I asked Bruce some very explicit questions. Mm-hmm. So as we were talking through where I was going to focus on, I was asking him, is there anything specific that could get in my way? Is there anything here that you would not support? Will you support me going forward? Because I might as well ask him directly, because he's going to tell me yes, or he's going to tell me no. And hopefully he's going to tell me the truth. But if I don't ask him to support and sponsor me, then it's every man for themselves, basically. Yeah. So, and he wanted him to give me very specific guidance and really be open and honest to help me navigate where I was trying to get to. If I was going to be his successor, and that doesn't mean I'm the only person that could potentially be his successor, because at the end of the day, it ended up being two of us that he was prepared, you know, to go forward and see either one of these people can do this job. But when they said, well, who do you recommend? I recommend Debra. And I'm recommending her because.
Right.
And he went through the reasons as to why he felt that was important. That would never have happened had I not had that conversation with him from the gate.
And I agree with you. I think it's important. In the company my husband and I had, we had a mentor program. And in that mentor program, we asked for what people aspired to be. And so we knew from day one that certain people said, I want to be a VP one day. I want to be a project manager in 5 years. And I remember one of my staff, and we guided that person so they would be ready at the 5-year mark. And she was. Although when we said, you're ready, she said, what was I thinking? Because suddenly she realized that being a manager is more complex than you think. It's not just check boxes. It's the relationship. It's the complexity of the projects that you have now. But she thought about it over the weekend after I told her, this is why you qualify to be this. And she said, okay, Hilda, I'm ready. I said, good.
But, you know, part of that is also being really honest with people. And I'm not a fan of brutal honesty. Someone, I think it was Daniel Coyle, the author, said, who wants to have brutal honesty? Nobody. He said, warm candor. That's the ticket. Warm candor.
Oh, I love that expression. You have a lot of good expressions.
Warm candor. So when I had a sales rep wanting to be a sales leader, want to be a sales manager. And we sat down, and I had to sit down with him, and I said, listen, it's not that you cannot be a sales leader, but you are used to being an individual contributor, making a boatload of money, focused on your quota, etc. In order for you to be a manager, you have to care more about the people than you care about yourself. And that's not where you are. So, and that's not a criticism. You just have to be prepared to make that shift. And if you're not prepared to make that shift, then people management is not for you, at least not right now. And he recognized, okay, someone's actually told him the truth.
And that's good, because I think a lot of people get promoted to be managers because of their not because of their technical skills and their ability to manage projects in an efficient way, right? The people management, people think, oh, that'll come, or they got it, or they don't got it. But that is the essence. The people management skills are the ones that will help the projects run smoothly and will keep the staff motivated. And people don't get that. But thank you for sharing that example, because it is the people management skills that will help the company in the long run. So much. We could talk all day, but I do want to cover a couple of other things. I want to talk about the fact that you are a busy, successful executive, but you've also got this amazing company. I love the name of it. It's called Stiletto Gladiator. Okay. Yeah. Stiletto Gladiator. Can you imagine kicking butt with those 3 to 4 or 5 inch heels? Tell us about Stiletto Gladiator.
Well, it's an interesting thing, because how it came about is, so like many other people, I have been downsized out of a corporation. And that happened to me at HP, 28, almost 30 years, 28 and a half years. I knew it was coming. So that's a whole other interview, as to sort of being able to read the signs of what's going on in your organization. And when you sort of are no longer in the inner circle, sort of thing, and realize, oh yeah, okay, this is not going to work. New leader came in, some friction. I thought, oh my gosh, this was like a 360 from what, I had dealt with before. And so I knew it was coming, and that's, as I said, a whole other story. Certainly worked out at the end of the day. So I ended up leaving HP and going into, that what's next kind of thing. I felt I had one more corporate gig left in me, that I wasn't done, because I had planned to maybe work for HP for another 5 or 8 years and then step out and do some consulting work, because I had so many other things. But I formed this company because I thought, well, you got to go out and do some things, and let's do some things around what you're interested in. Leadership, diversity, talent, particularly for women in high tech, because I felt that I was able to be very successful operating a little bit differently than, remember, raised without gender boundaries. So I think I was unique in some respects. So I decided to form this consultancy, and I was just going by my name like many people do. And my daughter said to me, it was a week after I got the notice that, my job had been eliminated, blah, 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 blah. And it was a week after I got remarried. So there was a lot going on in this particular time. And my daughter calls me and says, how you doing, Mama? She just wanted to check how I was making out. And I said, oh, I'm doing okay. And she goes, you rocked that world in your 5-inch stilettos like a gladiator. Like she said, what's next? Because they were all feeling so bad as to, are you kidding? You worked for this company for so long. You showed up every day in killer heels and shield and sword. And it was just one of those kind of funny moments. I had it in a text. I kid you not, Hilda, like 3:10 in the morning, I woke up and it was like Stiletto Gladiators. That's it. I am famous from my 200 pairs of shoes. Famous for them. I have a beautiful, beautiful wardrobe of gorgeous, gorgeous shoes. And I was a gladiator. And I was like, okay, let's just go do this. I did it afraid. I was fearless. I was courageous, because lots of things happen in business and you need to be courageous. And to the point where people would come to me and say, can you go and talk about this? Because here's what's going on and we don't think it's right. And we know that you have no fear. So you'll go and have the conversation. And I would. I absolutely would. I would tell any executive, I don't care if you're CEO of the company, that, yeah, that's wrong. That's wrong. Or I would question and say, I need to get in your head for about 5 minutes because I don't understand that decision. And I was very fortunate enough that I had chief executive officers and chief administrative officers who would say, that is the politest way that anybody has ever said, that's a stupid idea. But if you're asking the question, that means other people are asking the question, or they're not asking it.
Yeah.
It's in their brain. So the name, I knew, and it was so fitting, and it's so interesting because everybody has such an incredible reaction to the name.
Yeah, I remember the first time I heard it, I thought, I got to get to know this lady.
So that's really what it's about. Go take the hill, and I'm going to rock it in 5-inch stilettos. Okay? Not putting running shoes on. We're just going to take this hill in heels.
It certainly evokes an image of a strong, dynamic, get-it-done warrior woman, right?
Correct.
In style, of course, in style.
Absolutely.
Of course, in style. I want to make sure we still have time. We've talked about so much, and I think people are hopefully resonating with all the things that they can learn as parents, as entrepreneurs. But I want to make sure we have one more topic to talk about, and that's your new book. I would love you to share this book, why you wrote it, who it's for.
So it's called, here's the book. It's called Please Stay. And I'm a co-author of this book with this wonderful woman, Kelly Irwin. Kelly's a CIO with the Electrical Safety, ESA, Safety Association. This book is around women in technology. The subtitle is How Women in Tech Survive and Thrive. It was, there's no accidents in life, but Kelly and I did not know each other. We actually had come across each other. I work for Gartner today, and she was a Gartner client. And we sat down one October evening at a Gartner event and got talking. And both of us were talking about the challenges that women face in technology. We've already talked about some of them. It's a male-dominated career, still is. We're not even 30%. If you drop down to ethnicity and race, as an example, Black women are only 3% of the IT field. Latino women are 1%. It's wow. Crazy numbers. But we make up 50% of the population, and we're smart. And we're talented, and we've got computer science degrees and engineering degrees and mathematics degrees and arts degrees, because now we're talking about STEAM, not just STEM, we're talking about STEAM, because the way technology has changed and the way IT has changed, it's just not just about the bits and bytes and the numbers, right? These are around customer interfaces, and we need different kinds of skills. So we got talking about the challenges that we have, like courage, how to find your voice and use your voice, how to deal with discrimination, how to handle bad behavior, how to handle the Snow White mirror on the wall syndrome, where women are not allies, they are foes. And that's a whole other discussion. And we got talking about it, and we decided we would write this book together. And it has been an 18-month journey. It's sitting with our publisher. We have to make the decision tonight on the cover. We're down to the last 2 choices. This is one of them.
So this is almost hot off the press, or it's hot off the press?
No, we're in the fall. We're hoping for a late fall release. We will see a few chapters. The book is written. The book is completely written.
Yeah.
Now it's in the publishing phase, where now we're learning all the other stuff. That we thought the writing was the hard part. Okay? It's all the other stuff to get a book published that we're there. And our goal is to encourage young women, first of all, to go into the field. And really, we need to get to our young women younger, because they're very smart. We need to get into grade school and in middle school and in high school to encourage them to embrace technology as a field, because it's not just for, geeky boys, as an example. Mm-hmm. And we need the women that enter this field in their 20s and their 30s to stay. There is a bit of an exodus going on right now, where 56% of women in IT, that's a huge number, will choose to leave. And they'll choose to leave either to have a family, and they don't feel that they can do the balance of having children and this kind of career, or they're dealing with Me Too kind of issues and culture issues where they don't feel they belong. We need those women to stay in this field. So we need to help equip them to how do you survive and thrive, regardless of what's going around you. And the tips and the lessons that we share and the actions, because we decided we would tell stories, and then we would give you actions. So as an example, how do you find your voice? How do you do that? Like we were talking about with confidence earlier, how do you build the confidence so that they will stay? Because we need them. We need them in this field. We need that gender perspective. We're different. We think differently than our male colleagues. We need our male colleagues to support us. So we're hoping to, launch this book and build a platform basically to encourage women to engage in a maybe a more prescriptive way to drive their careers successfully.
That's so good, and I think it's so needed. I like the fact that you're also giving them actions, because I think sometimes you can read a book and you get inspired by it, but it's turning that inspiration into something practical, right?
Correct.
So giving an action is really good. I remember myself going into a training session, learning all about the legal changes when the bill that impacted on employment standards happened. And I would go and I would listen to all these lawyers, but they never told me how to do it. I figured I got tired of that. So I actually created my own webinar where I spent a quarter of the time telling people about the changes, but then I walked them step by step. What does that mean to you? So your book sounds like a must read for people to understand why, if they're in IT, they had a passion for it. They need to stay. And here are tips from Debra and her colleague on how to do that. I think this has been such a wonderful interview. I've enjoyed it so much, dabbling through so many different aspects of who you are, what you've done to make you who you are, to inspire other people who are either thinking about careers or thinking about things they can use in their own businesses. So thank you so much, Debra. How can people reach you? How can they connect with this wonderful, wonderful person?
Well, they can reach me on LinkedIn. They'll find me there as D. Keeling Christmas, Keeling Christmas, like the holiday. They can reach me at Gartner. It's first name dot last name at Gartner. I work for Gartner Canada, which is the largest IT research company on the face of the planet. Phenomenal company to work for. They can reach me there as well, and they can reach me at Debra at Women in Tech Drive also, because that's the community and the platform that we're building. I'll tell you, Hilda, when we went out to LinkedIn and just put the book out there, the responses that we got from hundreds of women around the world was, count me in. What can I do to help? And so we are really hoping to change the landscape for women in this field, in this career. So they can reach me, through Tech Tribe as well. So there's a couple of ways.
Good. And first name, last name, Gartner, is that Debra.Christmas?
Yeah, Debra spelled Debra. I'm not the Deborah, I'm Debra.Christmas@Gartner.com.
Well, Debra, thank you. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing your wisdom and knowledge. And I've had an enjoyable pleasure of spending this more lengthy time having a discussion with you. So thank you again for coming in.
I so appreciate you asking me, Hilda. I know we haven't seen each other in person since our workshop weekend together, which was fabulous. So this was really wonderful. I really appreciate it.